This is Eating Crow with Pete Durand.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Eating Crow podcast. I'm not actually hosted. I'm joined by. It's the first time I've ever screwed up an intro, by the way, Nat. We're going to keep it in there.
You're nervous.
We're going to keep it. Yeah, you're an intimidating guy. This is Nat Berman, everyone. Say hi, Nat.
Hi, Nat.
I was curious what t-shirt Nat was going to wear today. He's wearing Crazy Uncle t-shirt.
I blew it today.
I am kind of disappointed, actually.
I did a podcast yesterday, and I had to change my shirt because I had one that says Blue Star Airlines, and it was more of like a financial podcast. And I had one on, and the guy was like, "Could you change it?" I was like, "Yeah, sure, no problem."
Oh, really? He asked you to change your shirt?
Yeah. Oh, I offered it, and he said yes. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of things for us to cover today, but I reached out. I love your content. I think it's thought provoking. I think you lay it all out there. But you were a recruiter when you first got out of school.
Mm-hmm.
So you started in recruiting. I'm ending in recruiting, which is a place I never thought I'd be. So we have a little common ground.
Okay. Well, common, not so common. I mean, because in today's day and age, my assumption is that everything I was doing is not really done much anymore today. I mean, LinkedIn is a big part of everything now.
The smart companies have changed their ways quite a bit because the tools that are out there make it a lot. Well, put it this way: there's opportunity to make it a very fun business, but a lot of people still haven't changed their ways, and I think they make it very difficult. Recruiting in general is a terrible industry. The business models are terrible. There are really bad firms out there, so it's hard to differentiate a lot of service companies. So when you say a recruiter, people are like, oh, really?
Well, it's like it's got the same like cachet as like coach.
Yeah.
No, if you say you're a coach, it's like, oh, good boy. You know, like
why are you better than anybody else?
Yeah.
Right. I don't know. I fell into this job because the company I was trying to build couldn't find people, and the recruiters we worked with are terrible. So I just started doing it myself directly. Found out I liked it, which is strange. I never thought I'd like it. I even like the work of it, which is strange. But there's some things I've figured out and hacks I've created that make me very efficient and good at it that I will never share. Some of them maybe down the road. But, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is going to be A, your t-shirts, and B, the fact that you probably more than a lot of other people, you do a lot of flexing on LinkedIn.
Like literally?
Like the pool, you're in front of the pool, you know, you're a millionaire. You kind of flex about how successful you are and have been. But the reason I like it is you say, it's because I worked my ass off, right? And you tell people what you did to work your ass off. A lot of people flex, but then don't really describe. Sometimes people get lucky, by the way. There are people that just kind of got lucky. They were in the right place at the right time with the right company. They went public. You know, they had the right stock options. A lot, especially people that make a lot of money in options, have nothing to do with how that company was founded or grown. They just had a job there. Like literally, they just had a job there. So, you know, what was it about? You kind of describe it in your story, but you woke up one day and realized, I don't want to work for the man.
I don't think I ever did, really, to be honest with you. And
right.
I think I was just trying to find my way around employment and, you know, what is it that I want to do? And, you know, I've actually written about this, and I've created content around the first time I realized I didn't really want to do it. And that was the first week of being on a train, commuting to New York City, wearing a suit, thinking I was like the man. And then I realized I didn't like it at all. I just saw a bunch of guys who were probably 20, 30 years my senior, and they just looked miserable. And my commute was not, I don't want to get into too much detail, but I worked in the World Trade Center in the tower, Twin Towers. Mm-hmm. I actually quit my job about 4 or 5 weeks before 9/11, which is kind of insane. I was on the 81st floor, and but I just distinctly remember my commute. So I lived in Port Washington, New York, commuted to the Twin Towers, which is not a fun commute. You're going to Penn Station, you're taking 2 subways. Yeah. And then you're walking as soon as you get out, and then you're taking, you know, the elevator or whatever, 81 floors. And it got to me after like 2 days. I was like, in the beginning, waking up at 6, I felt so important. You know, I felt so cool wearing my suit when I'm literally just going to a cubicle to cold call for 8 hours. That's literally what I was doing. Yeah. And I caught that sort of dread pretty quickly. Now, I dealt with the dread for another 6.5, 7 years, but luckily through the entire course, my jobs always improved. They got better and better and better. And that was kind of by design. But I think ultimately I never really wanted to work for someone. And that had, sometimes it had to do with having a shitty boss, right? But for the most part, it had to do with, I've just always been that way. I just never loved authority. I've always kind of wanted to do my own thing, be autonomous. And, luckily in 2007, fateful email from a buddy of mine, and everything kind of changed from there.
It's funny. My youngest son did an internship this summer in Charlotte for Ernst & Young, and they just offered him a job. And he's always wanted to be in New York. His older sister and her husband lived in Lower East Side for 5 years. He worked in Wall Street, kind of did the whole thing, right? So my youngest son found out who the E&Y director was in New York and called her and gave himself an interview, like literally just worked himself an interview. And, by the time he was finished, he's like, you have a job here when you graduate. So he just got the offer. He's moving to New York at the end of the year. My mom is devastated because the baby's going to New York. And she's like, but I said, you got to go check the box. You got to go do it. Same thing, right? I said, you're going to realize you're going to see your 500 square foot apartment, the subway, your cube, the subway in your 500 square foot apartment 6 days a week. And you're going to sleep the other day. And you're going to do that for 3 or 4 years. But it's going to be great.
Well, look, this is before I even moved to the city, right? So I was initially at my parents' house at 22 years old. Eventually I got to the city, and I was there for about 6 years, 7 years. And, that's where I met my now wife. And, I wouldn't trade that time, for anything. It was pretty cool. I didn't have the conventional city life because I think 2 or 3 years of that, I quit my job and went off my own. So it was a little bit different for me. I was pretty much in my apartment 24/7 working.
You were working. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, look, he's about to have a great time. That's for sure.
He knows it. He's been up there enough to know what he's getting into. And like you said, I think now's the time to do it, right? You go do it now and explore, experiment. And who knows, he could end up anywhere in the country after doing that. So I'm excited for him. Mom will get on the bandwagon here shortly. But so let's go back to this email you got in 2007.
Sure.
When you got the email, and we'll talk about the email in a minute, did you envision the life you have now back then?
That is very hard to answer. I think I envisioned some sort of optionality and freedom to my life. I think that was always there. As far as the actual things, like a house and a wife and kids, and I couldn't say that I did. No.
Okay.
That's hard to quantify.
Got it. Well, I don't think in your mid 20s, you're envisioning what that all.
Yeah.
You're not envisioning being your dad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Right. As you started down the journey of building, the multiple sites that you have, what was it that allowed you to continue to put in 16-hour days? What did you taste, or what output said, I can do this for another 5 years?
I think it was just like, it's not a great answer because it's almost more mental and philosophical than it is anything else. But yet I think the older you get, the more those things actually play out as being true.
Sure.
Honestly, I think the day I knew I wasn't going into the office and it was just my own thing was motivation enough. Like, it was literally just that. And I was motivated well prior to that. So, because in 2007, that's when I kind of got this email about this site called Blogspot, which is Google's blogging platform. And I started writing, and this is while I was working. And I think it was within a few months or so, I learned how to build a website, and I earned money on Google AdSense. Sure. It was really that day where I was like, holy shit, I could do this. And then once I actually started earning money, felt a little bit of confidence to leave where I was. That first day, I was just freaking up and running. So I had already been busting my ass at that point anyway. It was like I was working 8 to 6 as a recruiter, and then I came home and was writing and marketing and all that stuff for my websites. Sometimes a couple hours, sometimes many hours. And so I was already used to those kinds of days. And then I was just chomping at the bit to get to be able to do that all day, every day.
So 2 questions. I've built a couple websites, I've built some blogs, I've built some e-com stores, did all that stuff. Is it, if somebody started today, doing what you did in 2007, could they use the same formula and find the same success?
No,
I didn't
no
think
way.
so. No way. Right.
No, it's things are changing by leaps and bounds month over month. I mean, Google just rolled out an update a couple days ago.
Yeah.
AI is changing things dramatically from a content perspective, from a volume perspective.
Yeah.
It's very hard to compete with, outlets that could produce 20, 30 pieces of content daily just at the snap of a finger. Some of that stuff is really high quality as well. So
Yeah.
how that is all going to play out, honestly, I couldn't tell you. But yeah, back then it was to me, it was a very straightforward formula. It was just post really good content consistently every day.
Yep.
Market the hell out of it. Try and get it seen and just keep doing it over and over.
And then constantly A/B test, right? You're literally you're trying to constantly beat what you just put out, right?
Yeah. I mean, to an extent, I was never a very big technical person. I still am not. Couldn't tell you how to like fix a computer or any of that stuff. People are always like, "Oh, can you help me with this?" I'm like, "No, I can't. I know WordPress, but that's about it."
Yeah.
And even WordPress is becoming antiquated today. So
sure.
Yeah, it's just it's a new world, man.
You mentioned when you woke up and realized it was, you didn't have to go to work. It was you. I have had the same feeling about my recruiting business. I'm starting another software business with a buddy. We've been at it for about a year, and Hector just had another strategy call today. And when people ask me why I like recruiting, I said, well, I've been a CEO for 20 years. When I wake up in the morning, there were a couple different weights on my back. Number one, I had a couple hundred people relying on me to be successful. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
That's right. I don't mind pressure, but it's a lot of pressure, right?
Mm-hmm.
It weighs on you. Number two, I had to rely on those 200 people to work their ass off for me to be successful. And now that I'm by myself, I realize my output is directly related to my own. It's a one-to-one correlation. I have no one else to blame. I know the formulas. I know what it takes to go in and make this successful. To me, it's exhilarating. It scares the shit out of a lot of other people. They can't imagine not having a paycheck. I would never want to go work for another company again and get a paycheck.
Yeah, the longer I'm in this, the more I recognize that, to me, the risk is the 9 to 5. That is the risk. Like people are like, oh, you take a lot of risk, and I just don't think of it that way.
We went back and forth again a couple of comments, I think, on one of your last posts about that very thing, right? I have a lot of friends who have done the 9 to 5 and done incredibly well, right? They planned, they saved, they invested, they got promoted. To your point, they got increasing responsibility, but they retired at 55, right? You retired a lot earlier than that, but they retired at 55 and they're doing wonderful. So I think there's definitely a path for those people.
Sure.
And I think the mitigating the risk is different. I think the risk they take now is 30, 40 years ago, there was some loyalty in companies to people like that. To your point about risk, there's no loyalty anymore.
No.
You're a number in a spreadsheet. So all that work you just put in, you get let go at 45, hard to find another job at that level. Really hard. So it's all about, there's risk in any path you take.
Yep. Exactly.
Depending on what kind of outcome you want. So yeah, I'd rather control my risk than rely on somebody else to control it.
Yeah.
Let's shift to the content that you're putting out now, right? There's the coaching. It's group coaching and individual coaching, helping, people like me, right? Building a business or doing whatever, helping us get out of our comfort zone. Recognize there's a lot of work that has to be had to accomplish the goal. I don't think a lot of people want to face that.
No.
I think a lot of people, they want the shortcut. What's the most frustrating thing about potential coaching clients that you've discovered?
Frustrating.
Like if you decide not to work with someone, what is it that frustrates you about why, like, I can't believe this, can't work with this person because?
Something that would frustrate me is if it's not sort of easy to figure out. I can't really explain it. So a lot of the folks that I work with, 99% of them, there's this switch that needs to be turned on that they've never turned on. And there's always like these obvious tweaks. Like I'm never like, oh, I'm changing your whole life and we're going to do this and you're going to run 6 miles a day. And it's never like that. I work with people who already are like that, right?
Sure.
They already have the drive, the ambition, the success, all that kind of stuff. But there's always like a one or two thing missing component that once it's filled in, they really take off. And so you asked about what's frustrating. What's frustrating is if I can't see that pretty quickly, I know right off the bat it's going to be hard to work with someone. The other frustrating thing is just like, but it's also a great thing. It's like some people you just don't mesh with. You kind of know from the get go, and you're like, yeah, I don't know if this is going to work out too well. Like, I don't know if we're going to feed off each other very well.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that's probably it.
Is your coaching better in one industry or vertical or type of company than another?
It's a good question. The answer is no.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. It's actually quite simple. The majority of the times when I work with someone, the reason they came to me in the first place is never the reason we end up working together. And it always gets discovered, usually week 3 or 4, every time. And that reason always revolves around some sort of self-belief issue.
Okay.
Just does. And this is where people who are like 25 hear this and they're like, what a load of crap that sounds like. And I know that when I was 25, I probably believed that it was a load of crap. And yet the older I get, like I said earlier, the more philosophical views and beliefs come into play in terms of how you mold yourself and wherever you want to go. And it sometimes takes people a decade, 2 decades to accept that about themselves and realize that it's time to work on it.
Do you think, or do you believe some people don't know how to think big enough? In other words, you mentioned limiting beliefs or some self-belief issue. Is it because they can't visualize that level of success?
I don't know if it's a how issue as much as it is some people think that way and some people don't. Now, some people think big and don't act on it. That's different. Those are people that can be helped as far as I'm concerned. But for some people, and by the way, I'm not saying either is good or bad.
Right.
Some people are, as you said, are content and completely okay with where they are in life, whether that's a 9 to 5 or whether that's a part-time. I never would dissuade someone from something that they're comfortable with and makes them happy. In fact, I would probably push them towards something like that. So
do you work with any 9 to 5ers?
Not at the moment.
Okay. No. Your content seems to kind of say that's not my jam.
Yeah. I mean, but again, define 9 to 5er, right? So like when I say leaving the rat race, that's a very general term. And in the last month or so, I've been sort of updating that to more like leaving the 1% rat race. You know what I mean?
Okay. Got it.
It's a very different, like 9 to 5 is a 9 to 5, whether you're managing director or whether you're an associate, right? But the kind of person that I'm typically talking to and dealing with, just it's not by accident, happens to be around my age, maybe a decade older, maybe a decade younger, but they've been through a lot of shit. And so they just happen to be most of the time in either leadership positions like CEO or C-level, or someone who is more of an entrepreneur or founder.
What are the, and this may be difficult, but I think you've got a large enough swath of clients that maybe you can run this stat in your head. What are the 3 most common changes people need to make to be successful?
First one is every time, lean into who you are more. That's by far, I think, one of the biggest changes. 2, simplify things. People have way too much going on and pay attention to way too much.
Yeah.
That life can be simplified. Even if you have a complex one, it can be simplified quite a bit.
Yep.
And then I think, one of the biggest ones is probably the execution side of things. That's why people come to a coach in the first place. But it's the challenge of getting them to be able to get there on their own. I think in the beginning, everybody needs someone to hold their hand. That's completely okay. That's what I get paid to do to an extent. But developing, really good habits. People always say, find your passion. That's, frankly, I think that's a load of crap. I think passion and motivation are generally a result of the right habits that you have to develop. And some people haven't developed those yet and they need help.
Boy, we could go on. We get a whole podcast on passion and motivation for sure, right? To me, motivation's pretty, it's instantaneous and short-lived.
Yeah.
And
you're right. It's literally like a drug.
It is. And you're right. I think there are very, 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 very few people who actually make a living and find success in something they're truly passionate about.
I totally agree with that.
Right. I mean, the guy that started Waste Management, do you think he's really, really passionate about garbage? He just created a great business.
That was my favorite stock, by the way, when I owned a lot of stocks.
Right. Right. I mean, I think people are passionate, as you mentioned, when they put the right systems and form the right habits, they're passionate about the success that it brings. That's what they're really passionate about.
Yeah.
Because, I mean,
it's a difference between living with passion, right, as opposed to finding passion.
Yeah.
Like you said, Waste Management guy is not into garbage, but you can be damn sure he is psyched to be doing certain things. Not everything.
Yep.
But certain things that drive the hell out of you. Like, great example is me. My passion is never having to answer to someone. Right?
Yeah.
So frankly, the actual line of work that I went into, it was cool and I liked writing, and don't get me wrong, but I could have been selling oranges on the highway. And if that was my own thing, my own business that I saw potential in, that's the real euphoric feeling that I think people search for. There's only so many people who were meant to be baseball players on this planet, right?
100%. Musicians,
that's
same thing.
The example you're talking about, like movie stars or musicians or whatever, whatever you want to, whatever.
Well, I'll guarantee you, there are people who are playing AA baseball right now for the last 6 years, riding a bus between here and Poughkeepsie, that are going, this isn't exactly my thing anymore. It's a job. And I don't make a lot of money doing it, right? Again, very few people get to truly, by the way, I think people forget, when you turn your passion or your hobby into a job, it now becomes a job.
Yeah.
I started a fitness company in 2009. I'm still passionate about fitness, but when it became my job and other people weren't as passionate as I was about it, I mean, I'd literally look at a 400-pound person who's like, help me, and going, well, you got to make these changes. And they go, I don't want to do that. I'm like, this isn't fun anymore.
When I got my first clients doing coaching, and this was 3+ years ago, was when things really started going, it hit me like a freaking hammer. I was like, they're not all the kinds of clients I really wanted to work with.
No.
Do I have to get on this call right now? There's those elements where it's very much like a job. Even LinkedIn, it's like, it's a job. If I'm not producing content every single day and talking to people every single day, then the well dries up. And that's something that they don't tell you. Even rock stars feel like it's a job.
Oh, it's funny. I probably spend 6 hours a day in LinkedIn because I'm the talent space. It's where I live. By the way, it's the greatest recruiting tool ever created. It changes, and if you know how to use it right, it's amazing.
That's what I never experienced as a recruiter.
Of course not. You were doing it the old school way.
Yeah, it was
right?
2001 to 2007.
But I finally have pivoted after a couple of years where now I'm generating business because of the content I create on LinkedIn, not necessarily all because of my outbound work, which, by the way, you still need to do, right? It's still part of the game. You mentioned something about passion and habits. So it's funny. I haven't heard it worded that way, but I can relate, right? So I've built my own tools and systems for recruiting in Google Sheets. I tried other recruiting tools and platforms and CRMs, and I found them cumbersome, unwieldy, way too heavy. And I have perfected these tools, and I actually find joy in the fact that I'm hyper efficient. I know exactly if I do this thing 60 times, this is the output, plus or minus. And I actually get geeked by that because when I start a search, I know that when this happens, this will be the result. Now I've built a business that's a little more predictable. So it's funny, Nat, my challenge, even growing my own business, is leaning into that uncomfortable thing about growing and hiring people to scale my firm. Like I don't know that I want to do that again, but it's the only way for me to truly grow the business the way I think I can, is adding more people. So I'm trying to figure out what I've learned in the past. How do I do that without creating a system where I'm not comfortable going to work every day and I got all the other problems I didn't like? Mm-hmm. But what I do can be trained. Other people can do it. And I think I can do it in a way that'll prevent those issues. So I'm kind of excited about it, but at the same time, a little nervous. Here I am, mid-50s, and I'm about ready to make some changes. I'm like, geez, do I really want to go down this path? Maybe I need a Nat Berman in my life to help me get past those.
We can have that discussion.
Places. We can have that discussion. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit.
Sure.
Family. You talk about it a lot. Big part of your life. It's even though you couldn't envision it in 2007 when you got the email, you're here today. Optionality is a word you used earlier, which I think is great. Now you have this optionality, 3 to 4 hours a day spend time with your kids in your backyard, your pool, do the things you love. How many kids?
Two
Two.
boys,
How old are they?
11 and 7.
You're in the middle of it, man.
Yeah.
Best thing in the world, though, right?
It's gotten better every year. It's gotten better. You know, when they were super little, it was probably a little bit harder, less relating to them, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But right now it's pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny when you talk to people. I'm a baby dude. Like they came out of the womb. I was like, oh, you're my person, right? I could relate to them, love it. Right. And other people, like when they started communicating and talking, then I really got into it. Right. When they had little personalities, then I was like, yeah, okay. When you look at them and you think about where we are today in society with school, everything else going on, what scares you the most and what gives you the most and what excites you the most about their future?
The scary part, which is real easy, is just personal connection. That to me is just this weekend. As a matter of fact, my youngest 7 had 2 kids over, and there was a moment where my wife and my oldest had to go, get pizza or whatever, and I'm just sitting there watching them, and they were all on their little things. They were all on their electronics, and it was just so weird.
It is weird.
And they were all listening to something different at the same time, their own little worlds. And I'm thinking about when I'm 7, I'm out playing manhunt with my friends in the neighborhood and not coming back till dark when it's dinner. And, the mom is like, well, I'll see you in a few hours. There's no phones. There's none of that.
They didn't want to see you until dinner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So fear-wise, I do fear that level of, it's almost like you're not a human. And that I fear and saddens me a little bit. What I am excited about is that there has been no better time. And P.S. I would have said this in 1930, but I'll always say there's no better time. But now, in particularly, there's no better time to sort of make your own way, and have that option than now. And even then, I'll still tell my kids to get a 9-to-5 because I want them to see what that's like, and I want them to experience that. But like, here's something that I don't know, you may or may not agree with, but this new generation, right? You're 55. There's a lot of boomers and folks that are older, or even folks at my age that are like, this new generation is soft. They're too lazy. They're too this, that, and the other, right? Well, let me tell you something. There's people like that in every generation. That doesn't matter.
There are.
What people need to understand, I think, is that there's so much more options today that you could literally sit in front of a computer, bust your ass for a year, be earning $60,000. Some people way more than that, but let's say $50,000. Make your own hours, not have to answer to anyone. And yet we're hearing employers be like, they're lazy, they're entitled to this. No, they're not. They've been busting their ass building this business of theirs. They don't need you. So I'm not saying every company is like that and every person is like that. Sure, there's entitled little pricks out there, right? And there's entitled older pricks out there.
Sure.
But I don't think there's a full connection between the ability of, they're a hell of a lot smarter than we were, man, and they're a hell of a lot more capable of they've adapted quite well to, today.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. I think a couple of things that I would maybe add or clarify from my perspective is, sure, I would 100% agree that there's far more opportunity for someone to create their own life and living than there ever was before. Right? You don't need capital and physical assets to do a thing anymore.
No.
I talked to a guy the other day, and I don't condone. This guy's 23 years old and hung out a shingle on LinkedIn as a leadership coach expert. Never led a thing in his life. He got a master's degree in leadership from some school, and now he's a leadership. He's never done a thing in his entire life. And I interviewed him. I said, hey, here's the beauty of that. Nothing's preventing you from doing or saying that.
Right.
I said, so I have no right to tell you you're not going to be successful because you're doing it. And if you're being successful, tell me to shove it up my ass.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't work with you.
Right.
But there are other people, if you do this enough for a year, if you put out enough content for a year and you create enough of a following, enough people will believe what you're saying and buy into the hype. But you're going to have to work your ass off. there's so much opportunity that was not available.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
30 years ago.
It's funny that you said that, because I've literally written things very similar to what you just said, like that sentiment. Like when I originally came onto LinkedIn, I was fired up by how many crappy coaches there were.
Yeah.
Right. Like to me, it spelled opportunity that someone could come in and say, well, look, man, like at that time I've been in this 14 years. Like, who the hell are you, junior? Like that kind of thing. But in the exact same sentence, I would say, hey, don't let me stop you.
Shit.
If you're 23 years old and you can do it, like your bar is higher.
Yeah.
But like I would never not work with someone because of their age. It's just the bar is higher. It's like, you have to prove to me that you can help me. And if you can do that and you can
Correct.
convince me, sure, you might be a great salesman and totally suck, but you still convinced me and I still paid you. You know what I mean? So
hell yeah. I mean, there are a lot of things where I don't need to have 20 years of experience into your resume for me to give you credibility, right? Leadership is one of those things like, well, either you've been a leader or you haven't. Talking about leadership is one where I go, I'm not buying that. But there's so many other things you can do. I mean, I would never want to go back to an office. I could never imagine not having this productivity tool right in front of me every day. Now, my kids relish that time to be around their peers. And I do think there's a knowledge transfer that doesn't happen today without a lot of intention.
Mm-hmm.
Right? When I came out of school, 60, 70-hour weeks were commonplace. That's how you paid your dues. You were dragged into meetings, dragged on customer trips. Someone grabbed you by the ears in the hallway and said, you screwed this up. Here's what I'm going to teach you. That doesn't happen at all anymore. Like, you literally have to schedule a Zoom call with someone to chew their ass. Right. And by the time it happens, it doesn't come across as harsh as it used to be. But my son-in-law, my daughter and he are almost 30, and he's one of the smartest people I've ever met. Mine. He's a genius, like literally perfect SAT, ACT, D1 athlete. He's everything on paper, and he's one of the nicest human beings ever. But he's going to hit singles and doubles for 45 years and retire. He doesn't want to be an entrepreneur. He's super intelligent. He's going to make companies better. He's going to do big jobs, and he's going to take very good care of my daughter for the rest of her life. Right? He's not going to go start a company. It's just not his thing. He wants to go solve problems and think it. And I have such a respect for that. My two boys, my oldest son, he told me that, he's like, Dad, he goes, unfortunately, I think I got this entrepreneur bug from you. And he's trying to figure out how to wield it, right? Take the right medication. So again, back to the earlier discussion, there's many paths you can take to success as long as you enjoy what you're doing. My son-in-law, his biggest challenge is being challenged, like intellectually challenged will be his biggest thing. Who can challenge me enough to solve big enough problems? Because the workload that kid can do is extensive. Like, he's doing the work of 2 or 3 people in 3 hours. Mm-hmm. So mentally being challenged will be his biggest thing. And for my other son, it's a very different itch he's got to scratch. When you look at your two boys, 7 and 11, what have you noticed about them that shows how different they are?
Oh, man. I can tell you one thing. I mean, I know that one of them is going to be a teenager and think to himself, Mom and Dad just left, I'm going to throw a party. Mm-hmm. And the other one's going to say, Mom and Dad just left, I can go read a book.
Yeah. Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's amazing.
And it's like, hands down, like, that's, if I could put it all into 2 sentences, that's it right there.
Yeah. And the one that's going to throw the party is going to be a CEO somewhere and crush it. Right. And one that's going to read a book is going to do something. Who knows what they're going to do? They're going to teach people in the future, but
something very creative. Yeah.
Right. It is amazing. I had my biggest lesson as a parent is recognizing I had to adapt my parenting techniques to the 3 kids. It was not one size fits all. And as soon as I realized that, it wasn't like I changed the guidelines were still in place. The guardrails were still there, right? The right, the wrong, the morals, the ethics, that was non-negotiable. Everything in between was up for grabs at that point. Like, shit, how I talk to my daughter.
The funny thing is you and I are entrepreneurs and we don't like the company culture and all that, but what you're talking about is so analogous to how a company should be run.
Absolutely right. Most of my content is about that.
Yeah.
Right. It is. I've learned more about leading and managing from parenting than the other way around.
Absolutely.
And whenever I try to bring leading and managing into my house, my wife said, "Turn around, go back outside, and come back in and reframe your change." We're not your employees. We don't work with you. Right. and every once in a while, she would have to give me a little love tap to say, rethink your framing. So Nat, you've got your web businesses are still operating.
Yes.
When you look at the next 5 years for you, do you see more investment there or on the coaching side? Where's your biggest? What are you most excited about for the next 5 years?
I'm all in on the personal brand side of things.
Okay.
The websites, like I said, I barely spend any time on them right now. I have someone managing my biggest property, and if that works out, I'm just going to have them manage everything.
Sure.
Honestly, within 5 years, they could be dead. I don't
Sure.
know. I really don't. And that is something I never would have said 10 years ago. I would have never had a clue about AI and all that kind of stuff. And look, I'm saying this now, and in 10 years, this could be a different statement as well. But my perception and opinion on where we'll be is that if you have a big enough sort of network yourself, you're probably going to be in very good shape. And what I mean by that is just, that's why I'm kind of going much more heavy on the coaching and the personal brand side of things. I'm going to put some serious effort into YouTube, most likely, probably starting in the next month.
Right.
And like I said, I don't know for a fact that that's going to be the way of the world in 10 years, but
sure,
I have to assume that given the technological advancements and everybody's talking about AI and all that kind of stuff, there's going to be a major pocket out there that really craves personal connection and help from other people.
Yeah.
Not to mention the stress and fallout that might actually exist from this new wave of AI and likely layoffs and things like that. There's just a lot of opportunity out there as far as I'm concerned for people. And then you're talking about, just look where we are with the whole influencer culture and how things are developing there. Like, I personally think there's going to be a one-person public company probably in the next 10 years. I think that will exist.
Yeah.
I really believe that. So risk or no risk, like, hey man, we come from the same cloth. Like, is it really a risk? Like, no, I'm just going to bust my ass for the next 5 years, try and build something big, off the pseudo success I have on LinkedIn and try and parlay that into more things and just build more and more foundations. I think I was on my way with the websites, but I just kind of lost interest. It's been 17 years. It's a long time. And I think I've always kind of wanted to make a living being myself a little bit more than behind the curtain and just writing stuff. I don't even write anymore. It's been, I don't know, 8-9 years since I've written any content for my website. So this is a lot of fun. It's very gratifying. And it's also something where I'm very comfortable knowing that, like, the real fruit, if any of it, won't be for a while. And I'm totally okay with that.
Delayed gratification is an important thing. Put the grind in. It's going to happen down the road. I think
YouTube is such a perfect place for me because I know, like, nothing's going to happen immediately on there.
Yeah.
Nothing's going to happen in 6 months on there. And it's like, great. I got a nice runway and I can just get good at it.
Yeah.
For the sake of being good. And I know that I'm in a position that a lot of people aren't. And I'm very grateful for that. Right. Like, but it's still very cool to know that, like, going in, nah, man, you're not going to do shit for a long time there. And LinkedIn was like that. It was really a really cool experience. It was like 9 months of just grinding before these little things that you're told will happen started happening.
Yeah. Well, I don't think people realize that a lot of you see the diagram where people look at the tree and they don't see the roots, right? They don't see everything.
The flower that blooms, not everything underneath. Yeah.
Yeah. But there have been steps to your success that have enabled you to take the next step.
Agreed.
Right. So a lot of people are like, well, he just started this brand and look at how successful he is. Well, no, you grinded it out in recruiting. You started writing blogs, you started building sites, you got the sites to a point, whatever. And then you did the same thing again. You started over again from zero on LinkedIn, these blog platforms. You're going to start from zero on YouTube. And if you hadn't grinded and found some success and parlayed it, it's inertia. I think people forget the level of inertia. My post today was about people who are continual learners. I'm fascinated by people who they occupy their free time making themselves better every day, and they put the investment in. they say, I'm going to learn Spanish in a year with 10 minutes a day. I love people that think that
I
way.
love that. Yeah,
Right.
that's fantastic.
Right. So, and you, I have 3 hot buttons. My family knows it. Dishonesty is number 1. I just don't like it. Right. It's a hot button for me. Don't lie to me. Number 2, laziness. I do not resonate with lazy people. I just literally don't resonate. And they might think I'm an asshole because I heard somebody tell me that laziness, shouldn't say this. This was a woke response. Someone said to me, well, laziness is a symptom.
Yeah,
They've not been given the right opportunity or are not in the right situation to be successful. I'm like, there are just lazy people. Sorry to tell you.
That's the person who says, I'm just waiting for all these conditions to fall into place before I put in any effort.
Exactly.
No,
The fact that someone said laziness is a symptom. It was just ridiculous. And the third one is I just don't tolerate meanness. I just don't like mean people. Right. If you're picking on somebody who has no ability to defend themselves, you're going to see the hard side of me in a pretty bad way. Right. So I don't think people realize that most successful people just have a very different way of approaching life. They just keep moving.
There
They
was
get knocked,
actually an
right?
example, and it goes back to YouTube, and I don't know how you feel about him or not, whatever, but
Sure.
Alex Hormozy is obviously a huge name right now.
Big time. Yep.
One thing that was really cool that I found out about him literally in the last 2 weeks, because I've been talking to a lot of YouTube people, like strategists and stuff to work with to grow my own channel. And one of them, who's actually on his team, told me that when he first thought about doing YouTube, the people he talked to were completely floored because he said, so I'm going to do this for 10 years. Like, that was the first thing he said. And when I heard that, I had so much more respect for him. It was just such a cool thing. He just knew, like, he already knew, like, yeah, man, I don't care. Like, yeah, I'm going to spend a ton of money and I'm going to grow and maybe I'll grow fast. But no, this is a 10-year thing.
Anybody that hates on someone like Alex, they don't understand the backstory and they don't respect the work that was put in. Right. I mean,
I don't even care how much is true or not true. Like,
exactly.
We all know the Jim story. We get it. We know, right?
Yeah.
But let's go to what he recently did, right? That the video that he made and this huge sales thing that he did.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think people really understand. I've seen all these courses. Like, do you have any idea how much work that is? Like to do all that and to do it in however many years. And yes, he's had a ton of help. He's had a ton of leverage. But you can't do that without that kind of leverage anyway.
The dedication to say, look, I'm going to film everything I do all day long and cut it up and make content from it for 10 years. And I'm going to invest the money to hire some guys to follow me around, film it, cut it. You
still have to be there. You have to be there. You have to do the thing.
You got to do the thing. So he's done the thing. There are some things there are very few things I can create an informed thought. Exercise, nutrition, I can make some comments there. Anything else? No, right? I mean, if you've created content, you've built a business and built a brand, and you can walk the talk, who am I to question it, right? One of my challenges is I've done a lot of video work. I've created a lot of content. People say, Pete, you should be creating a lot more YouTube stuff. I'm not there yet, right? I haven't flipped the switch that said that's something I'm going to take on and do and dedicate myself.
That's how I am. I'm the same way. I just was like, I'm not doing this until I can really mentally do it.
Right. You've got enough of a platform now that when you make that pivot and put the time into it, it's going to produce fruit, right? I mean, videos, you made a comment earlier, and my business partner, do you know who Alex Sheridan is on YouTube?
Sure, of course.
So Alex and I are partners, and
awesome.
we're building some cool things together. Yep. And we've taken a very long road today. Today was one of those interesting, how much do we need to pivot here versus how much we need to refine strategy meetings. And we realized not much of a pivot, just got to double down on some things we're doing that are working, learn from the stuff that's not. Sharp young guy, really good business instincts, hard driver. And it's good for me to be around people 20 years younger than me that I'm learning from. That's a refreshing thing, right? Yeah, it's awesome. So, and he's very respectful of my age and my baldness. So we have a good working relationship. And
you look like you have a good skull, though. I can tell.
My wife will tell me, thank God.
Willis skull. You know what I mean? Some people just have a good skull.
She said, thank God you look bald, because that was not something I married, right? She said, you ate pizza when we were married and you had hair and you don't like pizza now and you're bald. What the hell?
I won't look good bald. Like, that's going to be a problem if it happens.
No, don't be afraid.
Go to Turkey and get the procedure done.
Don't be afraid. Well, I'm going to check back in with you and find out how the YouTube stuff's going. And, I was looking forward to this episode because I said there's so much more here that people probably don't know or understand. And it's just great to see someone put the time in and find some success. And, And now you're sharing it with other people, which is awesome.
Appreciate it, man. Really
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, we'll do a Nat 2.0 in 2024 and get an update.
You never know. I don't know.
But I'm calling in. I'm going to request a T-shirt for that episode, though. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm going to request one.
That's fine. I take requests.
Okay, good. Nat, it's been great having you in the program. Everybody, thanks. I'll put Nat's contact information in the show notes. And thanks for tuning in.
Appreciate it. Thanks much. Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks for checking out Eating Crow. Like and subscribe so you never miss a video.